Hi, Online Solutions Group here. We will teach you today 22 immutable laws of marketing and growth hacking. Growth hacking is a subfield of marketing that focuses on the growth of companies and brands. The growth hacker team is composed of marketers, developers, engineers, and product managers who specialize in building and attracting a company's user base. Growth hacking is not just a process for marketers, it is a new experiment in data-driven marketing. 1. The law of leadership. It's better to be the first than to prove that you are the best. One of the main thoughts of all the collaborative works. The leader gets everything. Coca-Cola was the first in the Coke beverage market and is now nearly twice the size of Pepsi. Time magazine came out earlier than Newsweek. He was already a leader. The latter can prove for a long time that their products are of higher quality and better in all other indicators, but they will fail. There is already a leader in the minds of consumers, and it is almost impossible to change it. In addition, the arguments of the second companies that the quality of their products is better than that of the leader are immediately questioned. Since the thought is natural, why then, if you are better, you are not a leader? People remember only the first. Few people know the second president of the United States, and George Washington is known throughout the world. The first person to fly into space is Yuri Gagarin. The whole world knows him. And who is the second? Give me at least one brand of detergent. Did you say Tide? Am I right? Yes, this is the name of the first washing powder. I don't know the second one. However, if a company can no longer become a leader in a certain category, it should not close the business. There are other possibilities as well. You can also expand the leader's services in this way to gain a place in the market for your own product. YouTube focused on viral aspects and made it easy for folks to share, including easy embedding of any hosted videos on web pages or blogs and Facebook pages. When Facebook didn't have video hosting and YouTube gained popularity with it. 2. Law of category. If you cannot be the first in some category, then create a new one. A very important law, best described by an example. Yuri Gagarin is the first cosmonaut. It was very difficult for his followers to be remembered. But Louis Armstrong appeared, the first man to land on the moon. He would not have been known as such and such an astronaut, he was remembered as the first person on the moon. There are plenty of similar examples in business too. iPhone is the first communicator with touchpad functions. When Amstel Brewing Company introduced its new Amstel Light beer in the US, it couldn't just be a new light beer. First in the category was Miller. But Miller was the first American light beer and Amstel was imported. Löwenbräu is the most popular German beer in the US and Beck's is the most popular beer in Germany. Try what the Germans drink. They know a lot about beer, as you can see from these examples. You need to be the first in the minds of consumers, and it's not as difficult as inventing a new device like a printer. In the software world, the new service that different from others and solves problems of users could become a separate category.
3. The law of memorization. Better to be first in the mind of consumers than in the market. This is a very important law. In fact, the Altair was the first personal computer, but it never became in demand. IBM was not the first computer company, but it has become one in the minds of consumers. Being first in action and being first in the minds of consumers are not the same thing. And the first does not guarantee success at all. Marketing is a battle of perceptions, and it comes first. To be remembered in the minds of consumers, you need to work hard, choose the right name, listen to customers, and give them more than they expect. And of course, it needs money. Even if you have a great idea, and you are the first to implement it, without sufficient funding, it will die. And someone with money will thrive by copying your product. It is very important to understand that if consumers have already formed an opinion about a product or company, then it is almost impossible to change it. Don't even try. 4. The law of perception. Marketing is not a battle of products, but of perceptions. Jack Trout and Al Rice absolutely love this law. The bottom line is that most companies, at least in the 80s and 90s, believed that the main thing was a quality product. It is he who will decide the outcome of the confrontation with competitors. They were wrong. It turns out that the main perception is what a person thinks about a product. It turned out that everyone thinks about a particular thing in completely different ways. Different men consider completely different women beautiful. A fan of Apple technology will throw mud at Microsoft, but will never say a bad word about Steve Jobs, even if the iPod he just bought burned down. At the same time, due to the peculiarities of the structure of a person, Everyone believes that it is he who is right, and that his perception is the most correct. Of course, this is not true. But this is, which means that one of the main tasks of marketing is to manage people's perceptions. Practical example. If you ask a person in the USA what model of Honda he bought, he will tell you the name of one of the company's cars, and in Japan they will tell you a motorcycle. The former associate Honda with cars, and the latter with motorcycles. This cannot be changed. Harley-Davidson is a great motorcycle, but if the company released a car under this brand, it is unlikely that anything good would come of it. 5. Law of focus. The most important thing is to stamp the word in the mind of the consumer. The law of focus is detailed in both 22 Laws of Branding and Al Rice's book Focus. This is a favorite topic of authors. The bottom line is that the brand should be remembered in the minds of consumers with some word. At the same time, it is important that the word is clearly associated with the brand, is not used by competitors, and is as simple as possible. However, securing a word for a brand in the minds of consumers is still half the battle. The company will have to comply with it and repel all attacks from competitors.
6. Law of exclusive right. Two companies cannot own the same word in the minds of consumers. If a company has already taken a word in the minds of consumers, then you shouldn't even try to take it away from it. None of this will come of it. As an example, you can look at the fate of Atari, which has always been famous for its video games. When the company started making its own computers, it started having problems, even though the computers were good. The problem was that Atari owned the word games, not computers. Apple had computers, not Atari. But the company Nintendo drew conclusions from this and released a game console. This is exactly what Atari should have done in its time. 7. The law of the ladder. The strategy depends on the position the company takes in the minds of consumers. You don't need to be a leader in any category to be successful. You can succeed by taking second and even third place. It is only important to choose the right strategy in this case. For many years, Hertz has been the leader in car rental in the United States. Avis tried to catch up with her all the time, but nothing worked. As a result, a strategy was developed, the motto of which was, Avis is number 2 in car rental, so we try harder. And we also have less queues. The success of this campaign has been phenomenal. True, Avis then destroyed everything that it built itself, starting a campaign during which it was supposed to become #1 in car rental. This was a mistake that Avis paid for with many millions of dollars. Each consumer has his own number of steps in each category of goods. As a rule, no more than 5. It is also interesting that the law of the ladder provides for the overwhelming advantage of the #1 brand over the #2 brand and the second over the third. As the share of such companies in most markets shows, it is. The leader really gets it all, which, however, does not interfere with the existence of others. 8. The law of parent. Ultimately, any market becomes a pair race. As a rule, any new category at the beginning of its existence is a staircase with many steps. But in any case, sooner or later only 2 steps will remain. There are many examples of this: Coca-Cola and Pepsi, McDonald's and Burger King, Hertz and Avis, Barcelona and Real Madrid, Duracell and Energizer, Virgin Airlines and BA, Ford and General Motors. This idea was shared by the legendary General Electric manager Jack Welch, who closed any division of the company, which could not be either the second or the first on the market. 9. The law of the opposite. If you're running for second place, the leader determines your strategy. The main task of company #2 is to find a weak spot in the leader's strength and turn his strength against him. It's simple. For example, the Coca-Cola company existed long before Pepsi. That is why the latter managed to carry out a large-scale advertising campaign called Young Generation Chooses Pepsi. Everything was simple. Since Coca-Cola is a fairly old drink, it becomes clear that the parents of current children drank cola. But, as you know, young people do everything in opposition to their parents, believing that they led the wrong way of life. So Pepsi appealed to this group of people to choose their drink instead of what their parents drank. It was through this campaign that Pepsi nearly equaled Coca-Cola in market share.
10. The law of division. Over time, the category will split and become 2 or more categories. This law does not need any details. First, there was a category of computers. Then it was divided into several categories: mini computers, laptops, ordinary computers, supercomputers, fault-tolerant computers. Mobile phones were divided into PDAs, mobile phones, communicators, and smartphones. 11. Law of perspective. Another fairly simple marketing law. Marketing results have an impact over time. The bottom line is that you shouldn't expect an instant return on your marketing campaigns. This is a long process. Those who are tempted to gain momentary gains usually end up poorly. 12. Law of assortment expansion. Favorite law of Al Rice and Jack Trout. Yes, we are talking about expanding the range of companies, which both authors dislike so much. Expansion of the assortment usually leads a company to success in the short term, but becomes a real disease in the long term. This is true, but not in all cases. For example, Chanel burned badly when it introduced Chanel for men. But Adidas, one of the most famous manufacturers of sports shoes and equipment, quite successfully sells eau de toilette and shampoo under its brand. This is quite consistent with the brand. His style, sporting spirit that is inherent in youth. At the same time, the famous manufacturer of lighters, the big company, failed to present its tights for women. Volkswagen's failure in the US market is included in all marketing textbooks. Everything started well for the company. First introduced was the Volkswagen Beetle, an ugly and practical car. At that time, beautiful and large cars were popular in the USA, and therefore the small Beetle became a good alternative. It quickly became the most popular imported car in America. Then Volkswagen introduced new models that did not match the Beetle at all. Executive Volkswagen? Ha! The company quickly lost its position in the United States. 13. Law of sacrifice. To get something, you have to give up something. Companies want more and more. This often ruins them. Instead of focusing on small things, they spend their energy on a lot of products that only worsen their situation. This situation can best be seen by looking at the development of tobacco brands. In the first half of the century, the majority of smokers were men, and therefore the tobacco companies decided to target their advertising to a female audience in order to attract women to this addiction. And only Philip Morris decided to narrow its audience by sending messages only to men. And real men. The Marlboro Cowboy was a truly masculine brand. But at the same time, this did not prevent this brand of cigarettes from becoming the most popular among women. 14. The law of attributes. For every attribute, there is always an opposite effective attribute. Exclusive law says that a company cannot get hold of a word in the mind of a consumer that is already occupied by another company. And there is. But there is always an attribute opposite to this word. It should be used. Coca-Cola was a drink for an older audience, it was an old and respected brand. So Pepsi began to take control of the youth. An attempt to take possession of an attribute of another company can even lead to collapse. Burger King proved this in its time by trying to compete with McDonald's in speed.
15. The law of sincerity. Let the negative, and the consumer will offer you positive. This is an example of the war of mouthwash, Listerine, and Scope. The first had a rather nasty taste. This was used by Scop, who entered the market with a similar product, but with a pleasant taste. Listerine had only one way out, to be sincere. Therefore, the advertising campaign, Taste That Disgusts You Twice a Day, received good reviews both in the press and among consumers. Yes, the company admitted that their product tastes bad, but it does a great job of killing germs. You can't argue with that. Well, consumers thought that since the product has such an unpleasant taste, then it must be the real medicine, which is much more effective than the pleasant-tasting Scope. 16. The law of unity. In every situation, just one step will lead to significant results. The essence of this law is simple. In marketing, everything is decided by one correct, bold step, and not 100 small actions. Arguably, Trout and Rice think so. In a military analogy, they are right in most cases. 17. The law of unpredictability. If you don't make the plans of your competitors, you cannot predict the future. Marketing plans are always conditional. No one can predict the future, including marketers. For example, according to the results of marketing research, Xerox should not have launched a product of the same name. It was believed that people would not use it since copying with Thermofax is much cheaper. Xerox disobeyed. The outcome is known. 18. The law of success. Success often leads to arrogance and arrogance to failure. The ego of an entrepreneur is an important quality that helps to build a successful business, gnaw the ground when necessary, work for days. But in marketing, it can do a disservice. A person who has known success with a bloated ego may think that he knows better than consumers what they need. and this will lead to disastrous results. 20. The law of creating hype. The situation is often the opposite of how the press presents it. Yes, hype does not always lead to product success. It is possible for the short term, but systematic work leads to the long term. Intrusive advertising in most cases remains intrusive advertising. Real revolutions enter without a report, at midnight, sneaking into your house. 21. Law of acceleration. Successful programs are built not on craze, but on trends, corollary from the previous law. It is clear that it is best to focus on the long-term perspective, on trends, and not be hostage to the excitement. One way to maintain long-term demand for your products is to never fully satisfy. 22. Law of resources. Without adequate funding, an idea cannot get off the ground. Another law that needs no explanation. With any, even the best idea, you have no chance of success without proper funding. Money makes the marketing world go round. If you want to be successful today, you need to find the money to turn the marketing wheel. Or you can use growth hacking to make your product popular. For example, SEO and proper advertising techniques with data can give your product life and regulate sales.
To see full examples of a company marketing strategy, subscribe to our channel. We will publish a working example that is usable in all European countries. You've probably realized that you need to do a decent amount of research before you can jump into creating a marketing strategy. Let's do a quick evaluation to see if you're ready. Go to our website and fill in the online test. You find a link in the description. Thanks for watching.